And then I started to realize that it was almost a guilty realization that I could start writing stories about myself, and I could start writing about things that are important to me. And it doesn't have to be because I necessarily want to remember them in 50 years' time. It could just be that I wanted to write the story and have beautiful products to play with at the same time.
Welcome to Scrapbook Your Way, the show that explores the breadth of ways to be a memory keeper today. I'm your host, Jennifer Wilson, owner of Simple Scrapper and author of The New Rules of Scrapbooking. This is episode 174. In this episode, I'm interviewing Ronelia Motroni for the My Way series. My Way is all about celebrating the unique ways memory keepers get things done. We're excited to have Ronelia as the June featured artist at Simple Scrapper. Hey, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how's it going?
I am so excited to talk to you today, Ronelia, and I would love if you kicked it off a little bit and shared a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited. So my name is Ronelia. I am from Perth in Australia, and it is, I think, considered to be the most isolated city in the world because it's very far from any other city in Australia and then across all the oceans. But yeah, it's a lovely city. I was born in South Africa and we moved to Australia when I was 10 years old. And so even though I was born in South Africa, I consider myself an Aussie, and I love where I live. I live in a house with my husband and my very confident 4-year-old daughter and our little doggy. And our dog's called Alfie. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics of my life.
Confident little daughters are awesome. So,
oh yeah, on her first day of school, she was asked. I walked up and the teacher's like, "She's very confident," and I was like, "I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah."
I'm sure it will serve her well, and I'm sure she's also going to continue to be the star of your scrapbooks. So,
oh yes, definitely.
So, what's exciting you right now in scrapbooking and memory keeping?
Right now, I'm really drawn to large full page photos and digital journaling on these large photos. And I am enjoying taking more of a minimalist approach with really striking layouts where you use the products that you have in a very clever way to really promote the photo. That's really what I'm loving at the moment. And all of my favorite creators on Instagram, I always love the layouts that have the big photos and I love that. I'm moving away from very cluttered layouts, I find, whereas I used to do a lot of them, but for now it's becoming all about the minimalist, which I'm not normally a minimalist, so it's a bit strange for me.
Sure. Now I'm curious, how do you get those larger photos printed? Do you print at home? Do you do mail order?
Yeah, I print at home. So I don't have a 12 by 12 printer, but I can print up to A4 size, which is just a little bit smaller than 9 by 12. So what I would often do is if I print an A4 size photo, I would usually put it on a border of like a pattern paper, so a 9 by 12 border, so to get to the proper 9 by 12 size. But any size smaller than A4 I can do. So 8.5 by 11 I print at home as well. I've never actually ordered those photos to come in, but that's something that I have been considering. It's just very expensive to get it done here in Australia because
yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so I haven't done that yet because I do all of my photo printing at home.
Very cool. And I love that you've found a workaround to make it 9 by 12. And I'm sure it just becomes part of the design of the page too, in a way to use some of that pattern paper, even though you are being more minimalist. So.
Yeah, exactly. To add that bit of color and fun into it.
Yes, yes. Now, kind of the bookend to this is a little bit of storytelling. So we love to ask our guests about what is one story or memory on your bucket list. And so this is something that could be really big, it could be really small, but it feels really important to tell and you haven't told it yet.
Yeah. So one story that I have wanted to tell for a while, and I haven't told it yet because I want to be in the right mental space for it, is a story about mental health and therapy. So I have been struggling with mental health for a while now, and I have been seeing a psychologist for about a year, and that has just changed my life. And it's made such a big impact that there's almost too much to say about it in a story, but I really do want to tell a story about how therapy has impacted my life and my well-being, and how I want to also tie it in with how scrapbooking and crafting in itself has helped with my mental health. And this also relates to, like I said, this is a big story, but it also relates to my experience with wholeness. I've wanted to tell a story about what it means to me to feel whole for quite some time, because I think when you struggle with mental health, sometimes there's a part of you that doesn't feel whole. You don't feel complete. So those two things really go hand in hand to me. And I remember Ali Edwards released a kit, and the title was the Whole Story Kit. And I got it and I put it away immediately because I was terrified of the concept of telling stories about wholeness. Yeah. So I'm yet to tell that story, and I'm yet to tell my story about therapy and mental health, but it's definitely on my bucket list and definitely at the top of it. I just have to get there.
Well, and I think going through this journey, and I've had a similar journey myself, that it helps you. I feel like I've had to redefine what wholeness means or look at it from new perspectives, because if I'm going to feel that way, I'm going to have to change my perspective on it and not assume that it's a standard of perfection.
Yes, that's very true. I think that's kind of one of the things that's putting me off it, is that I feel like it has to be this perfect story, and I'm procrastinating because I'm scared that it won't be. But I should just do it. I should just set myself a challenge. Like, today, you're just going to do it. And if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't have to be the most well-written story. It doesn't have to be 100% exactly what you need it to be, but it is just a story that you can tell. Yeah.
Well, and the story is ongoing. And so you will probably tell the story again with a new perspective and with new learning and understanding of what it means to take care of your mental health moving forward. So I think just saying all I can do is like tell the story from where I am right now, and know that there'll always be another opportunity to tell it in a new way.
Yeah, I love that.
I can't wait to see what you do.
I'm encouraged now. I'm going to go do it.
Yay. It's so exciting. So this is one of our My Way episodes because you're one of our featured artists at Simple Scrapper. We love kind of peeking behind the scenes and getting to know some of the creatives that help inspire the work that we do inside of our membership. Right now, we're in our storytelling journey. And so I'd kind of just like to give our listeners a teaser about you. And I'm curious, how do you keep track of stories you want to tell?
I use an app on my phone. It's called the Day One app, and it's a journaling app. And just because I'm pretty much attached to my phone all the time, so if a story idea comes up, I've got lots of little journals in this app for different types of stories that I want to tell. And I tend to just jot down sometimes all I do is jot down like 2 or 3 dot points, or sometimes when I'm feeling really inspired, I just write the story. I have at times and I use it also just to process a lot of things. And if I feel that I would like to tell the story properly, I do it in this app, and then I maybe turn that into a layout down the track. I maybe not, but pretty much all of my journaling happens within this app. Now, I do also do some story ideas and story planning in a notebook on a scrap piece of paper, but that's usually when I am looking at the products sort of in front of me and I'm physically touching them, and I'm sort of thinking what kind of stories I want to tell. Then I do some project planning, and I don't like to do that on my phone because I just like the idea of writing down little notes or concept ideas and layouts. So that's kind of when I do more like on paper, and then I would put what products I want to use with that piece of paper with my ideas and put that in an envelope. So that's another way I keep track of the stories that I want to tell, but that is when the story is more product driven versus experience driven.
Well, and I love that you highlight that we often come to our stories from different places, and that might end up meaning that we don't necessarily store those ideas or plans in the same place. And that everything, it's all okay. It's all resulting in a memory documented in the end. And I think we can kind of let go of some of the I don't know, again, the perfectionism of having everything in one place, the more ease we're going to find in our hobbies as well.
Yeah, and do what works for you, because I know that
Yes.
because a lot of my job involves me being on my phone and on social media, because I run events, and I like handmade markets, and so I'm often on social media, I'm often on my phone. So if a story comes up, it's just like a natural extension of me at this point in time, which is probably not the best thing, but it is a thing. So it's just easy for me. But if you work in a planner and you've got the planner with you, write down story ideas in your planner. Just do it in the way that would work for you.
Yes, yes. I've been thinking recently, I don't really have a desire to do memory planning as a creative outlet or something that's finished, but I'd like to better use my calendar just to jot down stories that I know I want to include.
Mm,
Just as as a memory jogger, particularly the ones where maybe I didn't take any photos, but I do want to write about it later. Because those photos will
yes.
always jog my memory, but it's those experiences where there was no documentation. Those are the things that I most forget.
Yeah, because they're the ones that there's really no way in 10 years' time that you're going to remember that. I
Yes,
remember
yes.
when my daughter was born, my dad was saying to me, "Oh, look, you're going to forget so much." And that was just tragic to me when I thought about it, because I wanted to remember everything. And so I got into this habit of just writing down every little detail. And it was probably a bit over the top, but I actually still so love that I wrote so much about those early months of her life,
Hmm.
because it's really special to me, even going back now and reading it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know that I like documented every diaper and everything for like the first 3 weeks and all that too. And I still have that record. It's really cute.
Today, my baby blinked for 2 seconds longer than normal. Oh my goodness, I need to write it down.
So let's
Oh.
kind of go back in time a little bit. How did you get started scrapbooking and how has your hobby evolved since you began?
Yeah, so I did actually start when my daughter was born. I was always into memory keeping in some way or another. I did scrapbooking when I was in high school, very briefly, but I've always taken a lot of photos. I've had planners, I print all my photos. I've always wanted to keep those memories safe somewhere and somewhere tactile. But I really got into it when my daughter was born. She was 2 months old, and I realized I needed to do something with the piles and the piles of photos that I have taken. And I didn't want to just leave them digitally, because I really like feeling paper and I wanted to print them out. And because I'm creative, I wanted to find something that I could do that's creative whilst also, and I had thought about scrapbooking, but I didn't really think in my mind at that time, scrapbooking was 12 by 12 layouts, because that's what I'd done
Hmm.
when I was 15 or 14 years old. And it was very much, I didn't think that there was another option, and I was looking for it. And because I'm somewhat of a contrary person, so I didn't want to just put them in an album, one of those like standard album that you get at the pharmacy or whatever. I wanted to find something that sparked joy. And so I started researching it, and I landed on Project Life. And I did an entire 12 by 12 Project Life album for her first year, and it was my first completed album. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite albums. And the irony is, I didn't even take many photos of it. I do have some on Instagram, but I just was so involved in creating these layouts. I just loved it. And that is really what sparked that passion for memory keeping for me. Now, over time, it became more about the story. So I started to realize that I was allowed to scrapbook for myself as well as for my family, because everything was about my daughter at that stage. Every story I told was about her or my husband, Justin, or it was just family focused, and it was not really about me. And then I started to realize that it was almost a guilty realization that I could start writing stories about myself, and I could start writing about things that are important to me. And it doesn't have to be because I necessarily want to remember them in 50 years' time. It could just be that I wanted to write the story and have beautiful products to play with at the same time. So that's kind of how my hobby has changed over time. It was very much initially like, this is going to be my daughter's baby album and I'm going to record her life. And then it's become about recording all of our lives and our collective experiences.
Oh, I love that. I love how it kind of turned into even more of a gratitude practice and a celebration of life right now. Because I think that's, to me, that's one of the reasons why we all stick with this, because it's, yes, we want to save the memories. Yes, we want to play with the products, but it's how it makes us feel and feel connected to the life we're living that I think ends up being like the real value.
Exactly. And like Brene Brown says, like, your story is important. It's part of who you are, and it's about self-discovery and understanding who you want to become as well. And recording that somewhere, there's something really special and lovely about that.
Oh, and that's that. I mean, that's another kind of justification and alignment for you to document your own mental health story going to therapy.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's so, I mean, that's the justification or the reasoning that you have. Because that's one of the biggest places that we discover more about ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I feel like I'm like challenging you a little bit here to like nudging you forward on this project, but maybe it's just because it's so personal to me as well.
I'm definitely going to challenge myself. By the time this podcast goes up, I need to have told that story. I've got time. It's
awesome.
fine.
I will. You need to email me a link to the Instagram post and I will include it in the show notes.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely do that.
Yes. All right, let's talk a little bit more about how you're creating these days. So you already mentioned a little bit about size and format, but can you explain a little bit more about how you're typically creating now that you're not doing, traditional 12 by 12 project life?
Yes. So I do still have I have got an annual 12 by 12 project life album that I do, because I do still like the continuous memory keeping element of that. Like, this is my year in a binder. So I do still like that. But that is more of a facts type of, this is what we did, then this is what we did, this is what we did. I don't spend too much time journaling. It's really just for, this is our family memories, moving on. But in terms of other sizes, like if the size exists, I've probably done it. I have got 2 6x8 albums that I work in, one that's dedicated to my daughter and one that is a family, like that's one that talks about me and our family. I've just started working in the new 10x8 size, where I tell bigger family stories. And I love that 10x8 size because I can print these beautiful large photos. And like I said, I actually did that a lot during my December daily last year, where I did these beautiful blown up photos, and I just absolutely love them. I do have some traveler's notebooks for some smaller stories, life crafted albums. I have been really enjoying doing 9x12 layouts. Just really whatever the product inspires me to do. It's not so much the story, it's usually the product that dictates what album I'm going to be working in. I am on a design team, so when we get sent products, I've got pretty much free reign of what I want to do. So I sort of let that decide how I go ahead and how I tell the stories and in what size. The only size that kind of scares me is a 12 by 12. I have done exactly 3 12 by 12 layouts since I started scrapbooking when my daughter was born. And I really love all of them, but they took a long time because the size is daunting to me and I don't know why.
One thing that I've done in the past is I've made like an 8.5 by 11 or a 9 by 12. And if something just kind of feels like not quite finished about it or not quite grounded, I then just slap it on a 12 by 12 pattern paper and call it done. And, it seems to somehow bring it all together. But that could kind of be like a gateway to experimenting, is because you do have a smaller canvas, but then it does end up being 12 by 12. So
yeah, exactly. That's actually really good. Or you just do 2 6x6. I've done 6x6 layouts. I just do 2 of them, put them together.
Yes,
not 6x6, 6x12. Sorry.
Yes. And I had a guest recently talk about the 6x12 album as, if you're looking at it as a spread, that's a 12 by 12. It just happens to be cut in half.
Mm.
And so it's just a kind of a different way of looking at it and having an album that's a little bit more compact in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just want to go back to, how you're typically creating. And it sounds like you're just having fun and you're playing and you're just loving how you can connect the products that are like delighting you with the stories that you want to tell. And I think it just sounds like a really like healthy and happy place to be. I love it.
Yeah, it's nice. I do when I do create, definitely do it based on sort of intuitively. I don't really have many rules for myself about I have to create
Mm-hmm.
this amount at this point or I have to do this many layouts in this album. It's very much just like a gut feeling how I feel because I I want to enjoy creating and I find that if it's too regimented then it becomes like a job. And I don't want that. I don't want to feel like I'm working and that I have to do it. I want to actually just like love it. So that's why I've got so many different size albums because I just don't know what is going to tickle my fancy at any given time.
Nice. I love kind of like following your intuition that way. Now, whose products are you completely obsessed with? It's okay to share like what design team you're on, but then who are you also purchasing from?
So the design team that I'm on actually is they don't create their own products. It's called Kitaholic Kits here in Australia. And so
Oh,
what they do is they collate new releases and they send a kit out based on items that sort of match new releases that have come out. So they often do American crafts like Paige Evans kits that they match them with a mixed media kit, or they have like stickers that it doesn't come from a Paige Evans collection, but it matches the colors. So they kind of put together this beautiful kit. And so it's often based on the colors or patterns, and then you can create however you want. It's like a giant kit. You can do so many layouts with it. So obviously I love that, but that's not one product that they provide. I think in Australia, my favorite company has got to be Cocoa Vanilla Studios.
mm-hmm.
They are incredible. They release maybe like 2 or 3 collections a year, and every single one of them, whenever I get my hands on it, I'm just so inspired to just create because it's just such beautiful products. Uh, of course, I love Ali Edwards products as well. I feel that when I get products from Ali Edwards, I create in a different way to how I would with other products because her products are so often designed to trigger a story that you wouldn't necessarily have thought to tell otherwise. And so I love getting those products because then I can tell these stories that I feel inspired to tell because the products are always gorgeous, but it's also a story that I wasn't necessarily always going to tell. So I do love that. I love Paige Evans. Everything she comes out with, I absolutely adore. And really anything that's rainbow colored, I love.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I love
If there's a
that.
rainbow product that comes out, I was like, I need to get it. Like, I have got my life is very colorful. I've often got rainbow colored hair. I've got colorful tattoos. I wear bright colors. So there's often photos where a very beige kit or beige products just will not work with a lot of the photos that I take because I always dress my daughter in the same kind of thing, like very rainbow bright colors.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I love doing that with my daughter too. So she doesn't let me dress her as much as she used to, but it's definitely fun. Now, one thing that stood out for me is that just your point about how Ali Edwards products will often kind of send you in a different direction because it's so not pattern paper focused, whereas Paige Evans is a good example of the polar opposite of being very pattern paper focused. It's kind of a different creative experience, and it's both are valuable and fun, and I love that we can have different kind of creative flow depending on the products we pick up that day.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that I create in sort of two distinct ways. And the first way is create using Ali Edwards products. And the other way is to create using the traditional kind of like 12 by 12 papers or like pre-papers and embellishment and stuff like that. And I have distinct styles based on which products I use. Like, I would never be able to create a layout similar to the ones I create for the design team, for example, using Ali Edwards products, because they're just so different, and they inspire me to do different things. So I definitely, someone once asked me, like, what's your scrapbooking style? And I was like, I've got more than one. I definitely don't just stick to the one.
It'd be interesting to see like how you could pair like more of the traditional supplies on like a left side of a page, or you know, a half of a larger spread, and then pair that with like the full page photo, more minimalist, as you know, kind of like having a study in contrast. Like, okay, we're going to have a focal feature here with the photo, and then now we're going to use all the pattern paper and make it busy on the other side. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, I actually did a layout like that was quite similar, where it was products that we got in one of these kits. And it was one of the first layouts that I posted this year, where I took 3 large 6x8 photos of my husband and me and my daughter. And then I did, on the opposite side, I did use more of a traditional kind of scrapbooky type of layout, where I was talking about my wishes for the future. So I did do that then, where I sort of applied the, say, Ali Edwards mentality to traditional scrapbooking products, which I quite enjoyed. It was
very
quite
cool.
fun.
Yeah, I bet. So is there something when you look at your pages, maybe if you don't even have a style though, like that you use or do on most of your pages? Do you have like a signature thing? Like sometimes it's like corner folding or stapling something or a little doodle. Is there like something that you always do?
So because I have different styles, I was actually I had to look through some of my layouts to see what is one thing that I always do. And one thing I always do is add a date using a date stamp, because I feel like it just completes a layout for me. But I think, more broadly speaking, I definitely focus on the photo and think about how I can enhance the photo by using beautiful products and by journaling in such a way to really complement the photo and the way I've placed the photo on the layout. So I have never done a layout that doesn't have a photo on it, because that to me is often a starting point. Even if I'd wanted to tell a story and I was inspired to tell a story using not being drawn from the photo, I would always find a matching photo to match that story. If it's, for example, a story about blooming, I would just take a photo of my backyard, a photo of some flowers. But I would always try to match a photo, because I think the photo is the thing that draws your eye initially in almost all of my layouts.
Well, and I love that. It almost makes this little like triad of how we like assemble things together. Like we have the story, the photo, and the products, and sometimes one of those comes first, but we want to kind of complete the picture by picking, you know, what's going to fit together here in a little, you know, harmonious little package.
Yes, definitely.
Super fun. So when do you typically find the time and energy for scrapbooking? So I imagine with a 4-year-old, she keeps you pretty busy. How do you keep it going?
I'm actually really lucky in that she has got, in where my craft area is set up in we've got 2 living rooms, and my craft area is set up in the front living room, which is right next to her playroom. So when I sit down to create, she often would just sit down next to me and do some drawing, or she would just stand by and have a look what I do. So I actually can create and talk to her while I'm creating, like, quite easily. So sometimes she wants to get very involved. She steals my stickers often and uses them, and I'm just like, Ella, you're not allowed to take mummy's stickers. But so I do get a lot of time to create even with her around, but I find that I'm mostly creatively inspired during the day, or really late at night. Sometimes it'd be like 10 o'clock and I'd be like, I just have to create this layout now. I have to do it.
Yes.
And so, but I rarely would think, I'm going to have dinner, I'm going to make dinner, I'm going to tidy up the kitchen, then I'm going to go create. I'm not really in a creative mood right then and there. It usually is during the day, not after I've done a big job. Like, I feel like I need to be in a very relaxed state of mind to go and create.
Yes, definitely. And I think kind of understanding that about yourself is helpful, particularly if you feel like you're constantly kind of butting heads with yourself, like, oh, I should go do this, but I don't feel like it. Well, we have to pay attention to when our energy is highest. And like you, like sometimes, I am already asleep at 10 o'clock and sometimes I'm, raring to go and like, we're gonna jump in and do all the things now in the next couple hours. So
Yes, exactly. And when that strikes, it doesn't matter what time it is, when that creative inspiration strikes, like you take it, you go, you run with it.
yes, yes. So do you have any like strategies that you rely on that you use to kind of stay motivated or kind of bring it back? Because I imagine you sometimes have a little bit of an ebb and flow with it.
Yes, I mean, I think everyone does. I very much have to be in a very happy mood to create. And sometimes you have to create when you're not necessarily in a happy mood, especially, for example, when you've got the design team work that you need to submit.
Mm-hmm.
So I say to myself, I take it in steps. When I'm not necessarily feeling it or I'm not in the mood, I take it in steps. And I say, all I need to do right now is find and print the photos and put them in the little envelope, and that's it. That's all I need to do. That's the first step. And then after that, it's like, okay, you've printed the photos now. Now you just have to choose the products to go with them. It's very easy. And so taking these little incremental steps is something that really helps my brain. And it's not just with scrapbooking that I do this. It's not just with crafting. I do this with everything. When I've got big responsibilities or lots of things to do with work, I have to narrow it down to what that first step is. Because often, once you do that first step, you tell yourself you're just going to do the first thing and then you can take a break. But often when you do that, you're like ready to jump into the next thing and then the next thing. So I definitely take that strategy and I use it pretty much across my life. But also, in terms of gaining inspiration, I go on Instagram. I watch YouTube videos of my favorite creators. I engage with people who do creative things because then I get inspired to do that as well. So
Yes, yes.
and I also know when I get that little bit of guilt when I'm not creating, I don't open Instagram because I would feel guilty that I'm not creating, but I try to force myself to look at it because as soon as I feel inspired, I'm like, yep, okay, let's go. And then of course it comes down to things like you just need to schedule it in, like make yourself time, take yourself out on a date, treat yourself, set up your space, clean your space nicely, make a coffee, light a candle, and just do it. And so getting that space ready for yourself and getting like as if it's an appointment you have to keep, that helps me as well.
Oh, I love it. You shared so many different tips in that one little thing there of how you can stay motivated from the setting up the space and finding a comforting environment, recognizing your own ebb and flow, as we talked about before with the energy question, you know, seeking out the inspiration when you know you're ready to act on it. And then also kind of tricking yourself into getting started by making it as easy as possible. So I love that. I love you have this whole like little toolbox of strategies.
Yeah. Long time as a serial procrastinator. I've had to keep
Yes.
this up over a very long period of time. I was a lawyer for 10 years and a lot of the stuff I just had to, and like I said, I'm a procrastinator. So a lot of these techniques that I use now for scrapbooking, I used when I was a lawyer to actually get work done.
Yes. I can tell that we are very similar in that regard. So it appears very productive on the outside, but you have to use all the tricks in the inside to make it seem that way.
Exactly.
So is there anything that you've tried out inside of scrapbooking, whether it's a supply or a technique, a size? You already mentioned 12 by 12, but that's not in your comfort zone, but something you've decided is like just not for you. Like, yay, I tried it, but no, I don't want to do this ever again.
I think for me, it's those chaotic layouts that have got so much going on, but they work. When I do that, when I try that, it doesn't work for me. I'm thinking here like Heidi Swap, where if you look at the type of layout she creates, there's a lot going on. And there's a flow to it that makes sense to me when I look at it. But when I try to replicate that, it just looks overcrowded. It looks messy. It just doesn't look good. And that is just something that my brain has never really switched on in terms of scrapbooking. I've never been able to do that and be happy with the end product. That's why I'm leaning more towards the minimalist type of crafting. Whereas I love those layouts. I love looking at them. I'm in awe of them. I
Me
just can't
too.
do it myself. That's not how my brain works. It doesn't know when to stop. And so it just keeps going and going and going. And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh, there's a lot happening here.
Yes, yes. I totally get that. I keep going back to the Heidi Swap website because every single person I interview on the podcast is like, oh yes, I get all the products and I'm doing memory planning and I look at it and everything is so beautiful and so, like, as you said, full, so detailed and layered, but my brain
Yeah.
can't figure out how to do it. Like it does not translate for me on paper.
I once tried to follow a tutorial that she had on YouTube because I was like, if I follow the tutorial, maybe I'll understand how she does it. And I got partway through, I'm just like, oh, this is a lot. Like my brain is like tips my hat to her because honestly, every layout she does looks amazing. But if I try that, it just looks like I just threw some glue and threw some glitter and threw some photos, and then it does not look good.
Yes, yes. And she's such an expert in layering stamps too. And my brain
Yes.
doesn't always like see that.
Yes, me either.
How do you construct that? So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely some envy there that we share.
Mm.
So how do you stay organized? Do you have any particular like tips or solutions that have really worked well for you?
So I'm a very messy scrapper. If I am in the zone when I'm creating, there is paper everywhere, including the floor, including I've got a little coffee table behind me. It's everywhere. Like I'm a very chaotic scrapper, which is funny because I was just talking about like minimalist layouts, but everything around me is a bit insanely cluttered. So the best way that I know to organize and kind of deal with all of that is by making sure that everything has a place.
Mm-hmm.
I know where my scissors need to go. I know where my, I don't know, glue needs to go. I know where my cutting machine sheets go. I know where my papers go. Like everything has a place. And so even with all of the chaos around me, once I am finished, I can tidy up fairly quickly because everything has a spot. And so for that, I think the best thing is to have storage, some drawers. I've got some, I got off Amazon actually, just some acrylic drawers that sit on my desk, and I use those for a lot of products. I've got stamp or ink caddies. So I've got storage around me and everything has got its place so that at least I know that when I get kind of crazy and when I'm in this creative bubble, that when I'm out of it, I can tidy up quickly and leave my space in relative peace.
Nice. Yes. I think that idea of having a home for things works all over our houses and spaces and workplaces because, it goes somewhere else. It doesn't live here in the middle of the desk or on the floor or wherever. So,
yeah, if it doesn't have a home, then find it at a home. And it doesn't have to be a practical home because it can always change down the track. If it has a
yes.
home, then you don't have to think about it. And it clears your mind for other things when it comes to
Yeah, and
your craft room.
also when you can't find it where it is. Like
Yes.
you know where to find it again, even if it doesn't make any sense. Like we keep our thermometer in the cabinet where the drinking glasses are because most of the time when I need a thermometer, it's because somebody's probably not feeling well and probably needs a drink anyway. But that's the place that I always can find it, is if it's just tucked to the side of that cabinet.
That's very sound logic. I have my scissors. I just plonk them on this shelf right in front of my face. And there's no reason why they should go there because I literally put them there one time when I first decided to set up my space. And now that's where they live.
Yes.
That's just where they are. Like all my scissors are in this random bit of shelf.
Perfect. Well, that's their home. So I love it. So where would you like your scrapbooking to be in 10 years?
So I've been really drawn to digital scrapbooking that
Mm-hmm.
has got pretty much the whole process is done digitally in terms of photo and journaling. And then when it's printed out, embellished with products. And I would love to be able to grow that and find more creative ways to do that, almost to make layouts look a bit like magazine pages, where it's sort of an editorial type of layout where it just looks very neat and punchy, and the title is like striking, but it's not overwhelming. And that is something that I would really love to do. And I think as scrapbooking is heading in a very digital direction, there's so many amazing digital products. And a lot of support in terms of using Facebook, not Facebook, sorry. There's a lot of support in terms of using Photoshop, in terms of YouTube videos online to help with digital scrapbooking. So that's something that I would love to get a better grasp on. And it's not something that I'm 100% there yet. So it's definitely on my to learn list.
Awesome. I love that. I think that the more that you can kind of develop those skills, the more flexibility you have. And I've had so many guests on the podcast talk about just difficulty in particularly those who don't live in the US getting things shipped. The cost of shipping is just so incredible. Digital provides a little bit more flexibility to try new things and be more selective with the products that you do purchase.
Absolutely. And also because currently in COVID times and with the shipping delays and everything, it's taking so
Yes.
long for products to get here. I just got products that I ordered from the US that was shipped in December, so 4 months ago.
Wow.
So it takes a long time for physical products to get here as well. And so sometimes when they are first released, you get really excited, but by the time they get here, you're like, oh, everyone else is creative using this already, and you sort of like lose that kind of. So doing digital scrapbooking really helps with that, and I've done that a lot. Actually, last year I did 4 or 5 layouts, which I've never done digital layouts, but I did 4 or 5 layouts where I just used digital products, and I love them, and I really, really want to do more of that.
Oh, that sounds fun. I was thinking just yesterday about how maybe I need to try more of that Heidi Swap style, digital or digital and hybrid, to be able to kind of play with the layered stamping and get more of that full look, but have the control to undo and move around that you have with digital.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I think if you do that, you're going to gain a confidence around it. And so you would even then be able to probably translate that into doing that physically because you are used to doing it digitally then.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point too. Digital is kind of experimentation and training for design and any kind of scrapbooking.
Yeah.
So if you had to kind of step back and think about your journey since your daughter was born, in this community, what has being a scrapbooker taught you?
Definitely that I should own my own story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I used to only write happy stories, and I used to only share layouts that had happy stories. And over the course of the last 4 years now, I realized that it's okay to write the stories that is not always sunshine and happiness. But it's honest and it's authentic and it's truthful. And the whole process from start to finish can be so cathartic. And some stories are incredibly hard to tell, and that is okay. And I've never had the experience where I share a vulnerable story on Instagram or on any social media and I've had negative comments on that. People are always so kind and so supportive when you tell these heart-wrenching stories because
yes,
they're real. They could feel that they're real. And I do actually have a Storyline Chapters album that I don't share with anyone. Those are very, very vulnerable stories that are just for me, but it's still part of the process and it's good to get that out, and owning that is just amazing. And like I said, there's some stories that I still would love to share in the future. I'm not quite like I'm and I'm not talking necessarily here about the mental health stories. There's other stories as well that I would love to share, but I'm just not there yet. And that's okay. And taking your time to process that. But being a scrapbooker, it's not about perfection. If you want perfection, you want a bit of chaos, you want a bit of messiness. And yeah, if you own your story and all of that, it becomes a really beautiful thing that only you can create.
Well, and also kind of feeling the autonomy or just the security in knowing you get to choose what gets shared outside of your own space. Even if you do have a social media presence and you are sharing regularly, you don't have to share everything. You have that power, and so that can be empowering to know that you can own your story and you do have choices with what you put out there.
Yeah, and sometimes what I like doing is, even if it's a hard story to tell, and I can't quite tell it, I give myself little hints in the stories that I do share. And reading back at that, it gives me a bit of a chuckle. So it becomes almost like a nice thing with time, because then I look back at these stories and I'm like, I don't know what I was meaning when I said that particular sentence. Like, I was talking about this, but no one knew. So it kind of, it becomes a bit of a mystery that I like that. That's something that turns the bad into the good,
Yes. And I think there's lots of different ways to incorporate part of the story. And like we were talking about before, knowing that eventually you'll probably revisit it and tell more of it when you feel more comfortable. And I think that's what makes our album so interesting to look at over time, is because you can see the little threads between stories, how they evolved, and how our own kind of security in our story has shifted. So
absolutely, that is so well said.
Thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. Can you share where we can find you online and anything you have new or coming up in 2022?
Absolutely. So I pretty much just share on Instagram. I do have a YouTube account that I don't use very often, but I really should use it more. And that's one of my challenges myself this year, is to upload more videos. But my Instagram is ronelia.creative, all lowercase. And on that Instagram, it actually links to my YouTube channel as well, which is quite inactive, but will hopefully be up and running very soon. And
Sounds good.
In terms of what I've got coming up, I just want to keep creating what makes me feel happy. And after this conversation, I now know that what I have coming up is a story about therapy.
Yes.
So there's that. But yeah, I just want to keep doing what I do and just create layouts that I love doing.
Oh, I love it. I think that's such a wonderful place to be. And I think where we should all be focusing is, are we having fun? Are we really getting what we need out of this? And to recognize that's going to shift over time. Every year that might feel a little bit different. Sometimes it's more playful. Sometimes it's longer stories. Sometimes it's maybe turning to the computer and relying on our technology to help us. There's so many ways to tell your story. And as we always say, you have permission to scrapbook your way. Thank you so much, Ronelia.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you've been curious about membership, it's a great time to check it out. Our next Finishing Day event is coming up soon on Saturday, June 11th, 2022. This is a full day devoted to camaraderie and accountability towards checking off a project on your list. Visit simplescrapper.com/membership to learn more and join us.